Okie dokie. Welcome everybody to A Brave New World, which is something we haven't tried before, certainly weren't hoping for. I hope everybody's safe and well. I just wanted to run through a little bit of etiquette and a little bit of explanation, because what I've found, having done some of these meetings in my other job, is that they can easily kind of get either a little bit out of control, or often people don't get a chance to be heard. But there are some rules we do have to stick to, because parish councils, like local councils, have pretty strict rules in terms of how things are run. If not, then the meetings can be considered invalid. So we will basically be muting everybody on entry. They will be unmuted as and when required. All councillors will be unmuted from the start of the meeting. The meeting is being recorded as per legislation under the Coronavirus Act 2020, and will be available to view through our YouTube channel. The public are invited to ask questions and give comments during items 4 and 8, I believe. Public questions last for 10 minutes. So 10 minutes for item 4 and 10 minutes for item 8. Only one person should speak at a time. And if you could raise your hand, and there is, I believe, an electronic way of raising your hand in the chat section. But if not, just wave your hand and we will try and make sure you get heard. I think that covered off most of it. Obviously, anything, if and I can't imagine it'll happen, if anything does get inappropriate, people will be asked to leave for the good of the meeting. The other thing I just briefly wanted to touch on is that we are loosely following the National Association of Local Councils model for doing the meeting, which is as near as possible to do it in a manner that a normal meeting would be if we were sat in the school. West Berkshire Council are doing it slightly differently, because in their meetings they're only allowing the public to have any interaction by written question. So we decided that wasn't really a helpful model in ensuring people were heard. So we are trying our very best to ensure that the meeting is as normal as possible, and views do get heard and aired. But as with all planning issues and things of the parish council, ultimately it's for the parish councillors to decide on how they feel the best course of action is in relation to the benefit of the whole village. So hopefully today will be enlightening, questions will be answered, and judgment calls can be made based on the evidence. So the other last thing I just wanted to just touch on, because sometimes this does seem to be unclear, is all the parish council are volunteers and villagers. They do this in their own time. They read endless amounts of content copy and what have you, and do not receive any payment for it, to be absolutely clear. So I think apart from that, what we will do is introduce everybody. So I'm Andrew Sharp. I'm Vice Chair of East Ilsley Parish Council. With the other councillors.
Murray.
Brendan?
Hello, yes, Brendan McGrath.
And we were expecting Steve Meadows, but he doesn't seem to have made it into the room.
Just entered the meeting room.
Splendid. Is he here yet?
He is.
Do we need any music as an accompaniment? Late as usual.
There we go. There we go.
Yes,
Steve?
I'm here.
Excellent. Would you like to introduce yourself? You've just missed the welcome and introduction.
Yes, Steve Meadows. I'm a parish councillor in East Ilsley.
Thank you. Fen, have we got any apologies?
No apologies.
Okay. And can we confirm we are quorate?
We are quorate.
Yeah, I've run through the meeting etiquette already because I just thought that was really helpful for everyone to understand how we're going to do everything. Item 3, any declarations of interest from the councillors?
No.
Not from me.
No,
Nope.
not for me.
Right, on to item
No.
4. And what I thought we'd do here, because we've obviously quite a lot of people at the meeting where normally we might not have very many. I think to ensure that we get as much heard as possible, what we'll do is we will follow the format for the 10 minutes in terms of, and I would tend to talk about generalized comments, and then I propose suspending the meeting to actually go through individual questions that will give potentially James the chance to actually answer points raised, because I think that way we will actually get to cover as much ground as we possibly can while remaining within the legal limits of the meeting. So if we have sort of 10 minutes of questions and then a further 15 minutes of suspended session with questions and answers, and then we'll revert back to the meeting. Do the other councillors think that sounds reasonable?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine.
Okay, let's see. Who would like to make a comment then?
Can you raise your hand if you want to make a comment so I can see? Or use the thumbs up reaction? Stuart. I can't unmute you for some reason. There you go.
I'm muted.
Yes, we can hear you now. Thank you.
Cool. Sorry, I thought you would go through the things that you'd received. Maybe the things that I have sent would serve as a decent template for that. I don't know. My email to you had maybe 4 or 5 points. I know last time I said I was going to take the whole 10 minutes, but this time I don't need to.
Excellent. Thank you.
And yeah.
Yeah, could you just run through all the sort of key points, because a lot of the questions were so that hopefully we can get answers to specific things. So if you could let us know what you think your key 4 points are, or just cover them off as fast as you can.
Sure. The first point was that there were no site notices put up. Since we collectively made that point and somebody contacted the planning officer, those have been put up, so that's good news. But obviously that meant that the community here that have been walking up and down that lane much more frequently than they normally would do haven't been made aware of this planning application. So I imagine there's a lot of people in the village that are unaware of the planning application that's been made, and therefore are unable to represent themselves at this meeting today as they should be able to.
Okay.
The proposal now, as a difference to, I'm assuming everybody's aware of the previous application. The proposal now differs fundamentally in that the road has been moved. So instead of the road coming through between the Sunrise Hill cottages, it skirts around them. As much as Beeswax Dyson will want to paint this as some lovely gesture to the residents, it was actually going to be refused on that basis, so it wasn't possible.
How do you mean?
I beg your pardon?
How do you mean that would be refused?
The application was withdrawn before, and the reason it was withdrawn was because the Highways Authority would have said no on the basis that coming through the Sunrise Hill cottages was not going to be allowed because of the visibility splay. The access onto Cow Lane was not supportable. It would have been dangerous, essentially.
I didn't realise that. I didn't realise Highways had replied and said that they were refusing because of that reason.
Yeah, that was what happened. Maybe James wants to
Ben,
say.
is that correct?
James?
The application was withdrawn for numerous reasons. We obviously consulted with the village and the residents, and they had concerns about access through the Sunrise Hill cottages onto the main road there and the visibility displays. I guess it's important to look at it in the wider context that currently it's a farmstead, and as such, you know, that junction has been deemed safe, and we have planning to use that junction for all farm-related activities at the moment. So if it was a working arable farm, we'd be doing grain trailers, combines, grain hauliers, forklifts up and down, and likewise with livestock. If it was livestock, we'd be 24/7 access for animal husbandry, feed, digestate, and all things associated with that. And I think what we've tried to do here is a sensitive redevelopment of a brownfield site and demass it. And the
Could I prevent my time from being turned into a beeswax Dyson time, if that's a conflict?
Of course. So we will potentially try and answer this once we've stood the meeting down, where we can. But I think the point that's key to this is that while your speculation is that the transport highways would have turned this down, that isn't actually a concrete fact that can be demonstrated.
No, I think you're quite wrong. If you look at the highways consultee response to the previous application, you'll see exactly why it was refused. Well, exactly why they recommended it for refusal.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, so we can go back and check that. Would you like to make your next couple of points relatively quickly,
Yeah,
so
sure,
someone else could check in?
Fine. So the proposed crossing over the bridleway, I'm afraid I don't know the name of it, but where people would walk going from the village up onto the ridgeway, this proposal includes a crossing to that bridleway.
Yeah.
Which is quite urbanized, and I can appreciate the reason for doing it is because they you know, it's dangerous, and you know, so stop signs and things have been included, but it's a very large area of tarmac, and obviously bright red stop signs in an area of outstanding natural beauty, what is currently an open field, just seems substantial overkill, and going to be quite detrimental to the character. And if you walk up that lane and imagine an area of tarmac big enough for two large lorries to be able to pass, you know, it's a huge expanse of tarmac along with all the associated signage and that sort of.
And your final point?
We proposed that there were a few alternative routes that it appeared that Dyson Beeswax had not considered, and we're currently talking to them about whether that's true or what.
Okay, so we will come back when we've stood the meeting down and see if we can find a little bit more detail on that. And the next person who'd like to make a comment or ask a question? Richard, can you see that, Fen?
Yeah.
Hi.
Richard, go ahead.
I'd like to comment on the serious consideration that's been made for the residents of Sunrise Hill.
Yeah.
Instead of the road coming through and between the residents, can anyone see that field? Just right.
Yeah.
That's where the Sunrise Cottages. That field, the road now cuts straight across, not the middle of the field, but closer to the houses than the middle of that field. And I'd just like to, I don't know, maybe suggest that of all the other alternative options, that any of them would have been more favourable than cutting straight across that field. And it just seems a little bit, I don't know, I'm a bit confused and a bit baffled by it, really. But as Stuart said, we're currently talking to them about it and hopeful that can change, I guess.
Okay. Have you got any other particular points you want to make, Richard, apart from the road?
Nope.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Next one.
Yes, please. Harold Nerdrum.
Hi, Harold.
Hi. I'm sorry, I'm sort of new to this forum. And
We all are.
Also, no, not the medium. I'm talking about your group.
Okay.
You seem to be continuing a discussion that's been going on before, and I apologize for not having been part of it. But I misunderstood. I didn't think the topic was which way the road should go, but rather what on earth is going on here in the first place. What on earth do we need storage facilities in the middle of the countryside here in East Ilsley? I know Sir James Dyson won't have a clue about what this is all about. And I'd actually quite, if I may first ask a question, who is James Dawson? Because he would seem to be a Dyson person.
He is. He's the farm manager.
State surveyor.
State surveyor. My apologies, James.
And that means you work for Ben Wills, is it?
Yes, it does. Yes.
Okay. And in terms of declaring interests, your management team, are they in any way incentivized for the commercial outcomes of your activities, or is that very private?
No, I mean, we've got delegated authority to run the business, and that's what we aim to do. And we're a commercial farming business.
Yeah, I was talking about personal incentives to the management team.
There's no personal incentive to me. No.
No. Okay. I'm still confused. Sorry to go back to this, Andrew, question. Are we talking here about which way the road should go, or whether this
No, we're
should happen
talking
at
about
all?
the whole development. So this is just a very short session to get specific questions
All right.
or comments, in fact.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And the next person? Anyone else want to say anything about Nick?
Hi, Nick Watkins, resident of Broad Street in East Ilsley. I would like to know why Dyson feel the need to increase capacity to some considerable extent in the Ilsley Barn region, and what's its fundamental purpose. Furthermore, I've looked at the transportation survey that they produced as part of their application. And in an already overcrowded situation in terms of traffic through this village, and especially through Broad Street, which has become a Grand Prix track, I'd like to, there was no reference to the traffic through the village. There was just a number of sort of exits and egress onto the A34 north and south. I don't think any consideration has really been taken into account with regards to the increased traffic activity through an already crowded village. And I would be concerned that the estimates that they're putting on this are underestimating the volume of traffic for a site of that capacity.
Thank you, Nick. Have you got any other points you'd like to raise?
No, I just, I've raised my point. I just don't understand the logic of what it is and why it needs to be such 15 site or 15 barn site. It seems to be extraordinarily disproportionate to the environment in which we live.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a particular point?
I've had a question submitted.
Okay.
It says that although the traffic issues may have been addressed by moving the road to a different place, has there been an assessment on the increase of large industrial vehicles, 150 two-way visits each day on the centre of the village and the walkway corner by the pond with no path? So that kind of ties into what Nick was just saying.
Okay. Anyone else want to make a comment at the moment?
Will does.
Will? Okay, Will, sorry.
Hi there. Do I need to unmute? You can hear me now. I mean,
Yeah, we
my
can hear
point is similar to Stuart's, which is, you know, we walk these paths and this ridgeway daily. There's been no notice of these planning applications that have been clearly placed. We'd like to understand that, which has not given the village or the locals sufficient time to respond or react to this situation. And again, understanding, you know, the fundamental purpose of 15 industrial units in an area of outstanding natural beauty. You know, there's arguments put forward around job creation, but the reality is, you know, we have vacant similar units within reasonable drive time. It's not going to create more jobs. This is just a rental income, you know, damaging an area of outstanding natural beauty. So I'd like to understand again the fundamental purpose of what this setup is for. It's not going to create additional jobs. And again, why weren't the planning applications made clear to the local population? Those are my points.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Kate?
Kate?
Yep, hi. I agree entirely. I think an industrial unit here is completely unnecessary. But my comment specifically is about the opening hours that you're proposing. It's essentially every waking hour of every day. It's 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday. And on Sundays it's 7 till 4 or 8 to 4, I think. The only days where there is no access will be bank holidays. That's what, 8 days a year. It seems completely unnecessary to have traffic coming through this area at all hours, especially somewhere up in Sunrise Hill where we don't have much lighting. It is quiet, and you're proposing what will essentially be heavy goods vehicles running through here at all hours. It'll be massively disruptive for the residents up here, as well as the environment and the animals. And the other point to make about that is, well, on a personal note, when we live up here, this may devalue the price of our houses as well. It's devastating to people who live up here.
Thank you. Anybody else? Or is that everyone at the moment?
Oh, hang on, Gail.
Oh, Gail. Hi, Gail.
Malcolm and Gail, we live at Pond House, right in the corner, where there's a pinch point. And of course, we are quite aware of the amount of traffic going around that corner very fast. It is 30 miles an hour going up there towards Compton. We were hoping it was going to be 20 all the way through, and that didn't happen. But the number of vehicles we see, I've been in lockdown since October, so the number of vehicles that go past our house and the wall that darts out into the road is very concerning to both of us.
I would add that the traffic, I think, is the biggest concern for us, basically. Well, we both agree wholeheartedly with Nicholas in your comments in Broad Street. Mm-hmm. We're just at the beginning of that, of course. And that's it, really, isn't it? And obviously, it's just a way of making more profit, which is fine. We need profit. But this does seem way out of proportion. It's ruining the environment we actually moved here to enjoy. And as you said, we walk that every day currently, and the signs we noticed were up today. They weren't up. I didn't go there yesterday because of the wind, but the day before they weren't. So we haven't been given due notice at all. And I think as soon as more people realise what it's about, we've already got the development in Compton. When that traffic cuts in, it's going to be a huge problem. And they're building without concern about how they get on the A34, which every traffic vehicle will need to do. And the other thing, of course, like it's already happened with our good friends the Dysons, presumably it's them that have gravelled the whole road up to the Ridgeway now. And what's that done? It obviously helps the farm vehicle, but it also helps everyone else who comes along to park their cars. It makes it much easier. And you go up there now and you get choked by dust. And it's a racetrack. And in a way, the natural bumps in the road have prevented that happening. But it's another step down. Once you've got the road and facilities in there, the next step will be, of course, we need some residential accommodation to administer the next commercial development. And it goes on and on. So you probably gathered we're not too keen.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else want to say anything before we suspend this session?
Ruth wants to ask.
Oh, hi. I just wanted to make a couple of comments as a resident on Sunrise Hill. Sorry about the children. My first comment was going to be about the opening hours, but Kate has mentioned that. I think 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Dyson has said that they'll keep under review. I'm presuming, though, that whoever goes into the units will have some sort of contract that says So I need to find out exactly how they're going to keep that under review, if there is contracts to say that they can use it for those opening hours. My biggest worry for this is because of the use of it, it's, you know, they've got the holiday homes up there, which I know that highways were fine with the holiday homes, and so I think because they've agreed that that is being used to say highways have agreed it, they didn't support the last application for what was being used up there, if you read the highways report. The increase in traffic, the possible lorries that'll be coming through. My children walk from Sunrise Hill to the bus stop to get on the bus for school, and then they walk back again, and that is a blind corner, and it worries me as it is them walking to the bus stop and back at busy times. An increase in traffic, especially big lorries, is only ever going to make that more dangerous, and that is my big worry.
Okay, thank you for that. Fen, how are we doing on time? We've probably run that, haven't we?
We have overrun that 15-minute session. There was just an extra one here that just popped in to say it's about the actual requirements of those types of units. What would happen if they remained unused or empty? Has there been an assessment about whether locals in Compton or East Ilsley will actually have the right skills or want to work in them?
Okay, Fen, I'm going to suspend the meeting now so as we can give James a chance to answer some of the questions, and or if any councillors want to ask anything as well, so as we can get a better picture of everything. Any councillors want to say anything specifically before I invite James to say something?
Not at the minute.
Okay.
Oh, hold on. Just one thing. From a Sunrise perspective, people who live up there, the facility is essentially an agricultural centre, and it was dairy before. And, you know, from a traffic perspective, I think you're allowed to have lorries coming in and out 24 hours a day. So I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here, in that people realise that you're going to have stuff coming backwards and forwards all the time. So Dyson could effectively turn that back into a dairy, and you would have lorries coming up at 2, 3 in the morning.
Okay. Any other questions from councillors?
No.
I've just got one that hopefully James can pick up, which is, funnily enough, about the opening hours, because while I know there was a change made from, because I think the existing application had no restriction on any hours 24/7, 365. The days, bearing in mind where the location is for light industrial or office use or whatever, seems still quite long. So I don't know if there's any possibility they could be looked at. And secondly, you know, starting any kind of business at 8 o'clock on a Sunday morning doesn't seem terribly neighbourly in any way, shape or form. So again, I don't know whether later starts, because and I think that was, I did have one other question. My notes have gone. Yeah, I think the road clearly has got some issues, so I don't know whether or not there may equally be room for looking at that further. So James, can I hand over to you to see if you can answer some of those questions, and then once you've done that, we'll come back for any final comment, and then we'll go back into the meeting.
Yep, by all means. No, thank you for all the comments and questions. As you know, it's a resubmission of an application we withdrew last autumn. And we spent a lot of time over the winter reviewing all the comments and looking at them and working out what we could do to make it more appealing. I guess essentially it is a farmstead with agricultural and research use, which, as Stephen mentioned, gives us the ability to run operations up there 24/7 on that existing access. And if that was an arable farm, we could bring grain lorries in, tractors, combines, and everything, because farming is 24/7. What we've actually thought to do in the AONB on a brownfield site is demass it. So if you look at the proposals, we've taken out 50% of the massing in the middle of the unit to re-green the AONB, which we think is sensitive redevelopment. We've also, looking at the traffic, I quite like to dispel the myth that it's going to be HGVs and industrial units. They're small office units are proposed, so they're between 60 and 160 square meters each, which if you can envisage that as an office space, doesn't give you much room to get big industrial machinery in. And furthermore, we've made the commitment in the revised application to only put 5 units of rollers of doors on. So therefore, the majority of traffic coming through will be cars and sort of post-size vans up there. There won't be this big sort of influx of HGVs, which everyone seems to be portraying. We don't see it like that at all. It's going to be clean offices, and that will be managed by us, and obviously by that use class. We've put it in the planning application that 70% of the units will be offices. By that condition, we won't be having HGVs rocking up at offices. It's not what we envisage up there. To turn to some of the other questions, in terms of the site notices, due to coronavirus, the case officer isn't doing site visits, who usually put the site notices up. As such, they were posted from West Berks. I got the letter here on the 7th of May, just before the bank holiday, and arrived in our office on Tuesday, and were put up on Wednesday. So they were put up within 24 hours of receipts here. So apologies, that was slightly delayed, but that was as soon as they got out from West Berkshire. Looking at the access, we spent a long time looking at the access and what might work and how the best way to get into the site was. The route we chose, we choose it for numerous reasons, and we've looked at the other considerations that proposals have been put forward by numerous people in different angles. The route we've chosen offers the least ecological impact in the AONB. It only requires the sort of alteration of 2 hedgerows and 1 bridleway crossing, comes across an improved grassland paddock and arable field, whereas other proposals put forward run along wildlife corridors, break up wildlife corridors and woodland, and also placing in the least amount of road in the AONB reduces the urbanisation, which people are concerned about. So in that respect, I hope it's a sort of the best solution in access to that site. There's been some comment about using the existing road to the Ridgeway, which comes slightly further towards Compton. Again, putting vehicles up and down that would require some remedial work to that, some widening of that, taking out hedgerows either side, and running up a wildlife belt to the side of the tree line, which ecologically didn't seem sensible and didn't seem in the best interest of the AONB to do that. Turning to sort of other questions about traffic through the village, as of last autumn, on our road test, there were 12,000 vehicles going each way along Cow Lane between Compton and East Ilsley on a weekly basis. So the additional vehicles that this site might generate, and the proposals in the planning application are the worst case vehicle scenario, would be a less than a 5% increase in traffic through the village. Going on to the A34, there I think the last count was 56,000 vehicles travel up and down the A34 on a daily basis, which takes a 0.26% increase in traffic going onto the A34 on the back of this. Turning to sort of why it's being done and what the rationale behind it is. It's a redundant farmstead, and we're not going to leave it empty. We try and renovate and restore and rejuvenate buildings. We wouldn't knock it down and we wouldn't empty it. As mentioned, a farming use for it would increase activity up there drastically at a 24/7 operation, whereas this is limited on access, limited on timing, and hopefully quiet office spaces, which have limited impact in the AONB. With regard to lighting, we've been with the AONB Dark Night Skies initiative to reduce exterior lighting and outflow to hopefully minimise disruption. And West Berks have recently done an economic review on the need for workspace in rural areas and clearly showed a demand and a need for small units, for startup businesses, for offices, for artisan uses. And we've already got 2 or 3 people who expressed an interest that if this was to go forward, they'd be interested in taking some space up there. And we very much hope that we could get some uptake from villagers. If they're, from a downland village, if they had a business and wanted to sort of start up there, we'd gladly support them and do that. In terms of opening hours, to answer Andrew's point and a point raised earlier, very happy to keep this under review. What we, in the previous application, we didn't put any opening hours in. And in this application, we have. Very happy to review these and alter these as appropriate. We didn't want to limit ourselves on commercial lettability. There are numerous people who pop into the office to work on Sunday, or likewise, if you're trying to finish a project and staying late, we didn't want people to be in breach of contract and sending emails past 8 o'clock at night. We're very happy to keep those in review as appropriate, really. We've got a self-storage unit in Compton, which you might know about. That's conditioned on access hours. That works very well, so we're completely happy with that. And likewise, all the contracts for that explicitly state when you can and can't be there in line with planning conditions. So we're very happy to do that. To answer Mr. Chipchase's question about the view, I know he sent through a diagram of where the road will go. I submitted a revised scale drawing of how the view would look from the back of Sunrise Hill Cottages. I'm not sure if it's appropriate for Fen to share that on a screen or not, in how that might cut through. It's about 83.5 meters back from the back fence line of Sunrise Hill Cottages. So we hope that there'll be no glare from headlights coming in, because they'll turn across the back. And at 83 meters distance, I don't think the headlights would get that far. And hopefully it's a welcome improvement, instead of vehicles coming down the side of the houses and cutting between the houses, which I know caused concerns last time in terms of safety and children and being out and about. So bollards would prevent any vehicles coming down through the Sunrise Hill community.
I think that covers off most of the points. Fen, how are we doing for time?
Well, you can suspend for as long as you want. You're fine.
Yeah, apart from we have to get the meeting done by half reasonable hours. Would anyone like to come back and ask us supplementary? Harold?
Yes, I addressed to Mr. Dawson. And my first question, oh, sorry, am I unmuted? Okay. And my first question, well, I think I know the answer, but it's not totally rhetorical. Is Sir James Dyson aware of your plans here?
Yes, he is, yes.
And he supports them?
Yeah, so he gets regular updates on what the farm's doing and what we are up to. So no, he's fully abreast of it.
Because I find your explanations, now I declare that I'm not fully familiar with the development, okay, which probably disenfranchises me from having an opinion at all. I will be on the case tomorrow with my lawyers to study it in great detail, but I find your explanations disingenuous at best. And the flawed thinking is quite transparent. If you are suggesting that the alternative to this industrial development or commercial development which you're planning is to go back to an agricultural dairy use, and that we might be offended by seeing cows in the fields around you, I think you may be wrong. And I'm not sure what capacity your dairy would have or the commercial viability of it, but if you think that the dairy traffic is going to be anything compared to what you're proposing, I think it's nonsense. Secondly, if you think that 5% increase of traffic, where we already have a traffic problem, is nominal or minimal, again, I'll give you a maths lesson another time, because there are other people who probably want to say something. So the straw that breaks the camel's back is not 5%, it's 0.1%. And we're at that level now. So this is totally unacceptable, and I don't understand the need for it at all. And I will get more engaged tomorrow when I will go into the detail of this and consult our media and other advisors and lawyers to understand what on earth Dyson and New Beeswax people are thinking of doing here. It's completely mad. Thank you. End of rant.
Thank you, Harold. Anybody else want to come back just briefly?
Richard?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, James. I think that the level and extent of research that you've conducted on the area, from the nature and the roads and the ecology, is phenomenal. It really is. I don't remember being researched or our properties being researched, or you coming down to ask or see what the impact would be on this road coming straight across. I think the comparison of suggesting that it's a better positioned road than if it came through Sunrise and should therefore be a good thing. Well, it was never going to be approved anyway, so I think it's a bad comparison to make. Headlights not being seen at 81 or 91 meters. I can see headlights a mile and a half away when they come over hills. That's absolute nonsense. There's a tree line at the top of this field. I'd be happy if the road was just behind the tree line and it would cut across the exact same length of field, and it would cut across the same part of the ridgeway, and it would just need to reroute on another field. And I'm just lost for words that of all this research that's been conducted, and no doubt thousands and tens of thousands of pounds, that the resulting idea of a road smack bang in front of a beautiful cottage or a pair of cottages right near some, Sunrise Hill residents has been decided as a good idea. It just seems crazy. I'm lost for words, absolutely lost for words. 6 months into living here, I'm lost for words. I was told that care and consideration was taken, or is always taken, by James Dyson, and I'm not feeling any of that love at all. I'm flabbergasted.
Thank you, Richard. Kate, you wanted to say something?
Yep, thank you. I was just taking a few notes as you mentioned your points, James. And one of the things you said was that only 5 of the units will be roller shutters. Therefore, the majority of the vehicles will be cars and vans, meaning that these roller shutter vehicles do allow the heavier goods vehicles, because that is the whole point of the roller shutters. Now, looking at your plans, the remainder of the units are flexible and can be converted according to what the tenants wish to do.
They'd need planning consent for that, to change the card like that.
And you think that would be an issue, given that you don't think that 5 roller shutter panels with HGV access isn't an issue? What's to say that 6 or 7 or 8, given that you're setting a precedent with 5 of them there, that increasing that will be an issue?
We sort of discussed this at consultation last autumn, and we made this commitment that we wouldn't let more than 30% of the site go to roller shutter doors, and that commitment still stays. If a tenant comes to us and wants a roller shutter door above that commitment, the answer will simply be no.
So then why make them flexible?
But they're not flexible. They're only 70% will be for offices, and the remainder 5 will be roller shutter doors for access. For pallets, we've got a young business who weld little electric bikes, a one-man band, very inoffensive business, and very sort of low intensity, but equally they need to load a pallet on with a bike on, with the frames on.
Okay. How noisy is that going to be, given that it's 0.4 miles away from the homes here? How noisy is their welding going to be?
Not very noisy at all.
I suspect that's not true. I suspect we will be hearing that from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. Moving on from that, another point I wanted to make was your vehicle estimate that you have made goes up to 7 p.m. You're allowing access till 9 p.m. So presumably that's an underestimate of the number of vehicles you're expecting to pass through, because there will be more. And even 3, 4, 5 vehicles during the remaining couple of hours is an extra, 10 vehicle movement. So that increases per day. The other thing I wanted to point out, was actually very similar to what Harold said, was when we bought these houses, and we had privately bought these houses off the Institute, who then sold all the land around us to you, that was an old dairy farm that wasn't actually in use. It was being used for mostly lambing, and sheep were in the fields. And we bought into this area thinking it was a farming area, and we're happy with that. What you're proposing is not farming. And actually, I also agree that 200 vehicle movements seems a lot more than what would be there if it was currently a farm. My final point that I wanted to make, this is the last thing I wanted to say, is this access road that you're having, or you're proposing coming in, has bollards which stops traffic coming down Sunrise Hill, which we do appreciate, but it also isolates the two residents who are at the top. And I know they are tenants of yours, and therefore they have no voice, and this is coming from us down here, not them, but it completely isolates them. They are unable to then come down to us in their vehicles, and they have become a big part of our community. And having two homes which are completely isolated up there doesn't seem a good thing for well-being or mental health, especially given that this is such a small community up here and such a sparsely populated area. I think community cohesion is a massive thing, and seems to be what Beeswax Dyson have put as their ethos of community spirit and sensitivity. And sensitivity is something that is recurrently repeated throughout your proposals. I can't see how this is sensitive to the residents here.
Okay, thanks, Kate.
That's my final point.
Thank you. James, do you want to quickly come back on that?
Yeah, in terms of the access and the bungalows at the top, the Highways Authority were fairly clear and keen that that was shut off. We pushed back hard on that and got the agreement to put bollards in, which allows the free passage of people, bikes, to move up and down within the community, which hopefully allows people to get out and see those without being cut off. There is, of course, the vehicular access, which will go around the other way, but they're very happily can walk and get through. We're not restricting access down there. That's not the intention at all.
Okay.
Last
one.
Yeah.
Last. Sorry, Steve.
Yeah, just a quick question for you. You mentioned that you bought the property knowing that it was agricultural area, which is brilliant, because that's why we all love living here. So the fact that it was a dairy farm before, so if they'd restarted dairy farming, would you still have an issue?
Who's your question to, Stephen?
Kate.
Oh, okay, sorry. Kate, did you hear Stephen's question?
Yeah, sorry. So there was no active dairy farm when we moved here. I think we'd be much more inclined to appreciate activity which is sensitive to the area. Obviously, we need to have a look and see in terms of movements, vehicle movements up and down, but I can't see that it will create 200 movements per day. Per week.
The thing with dairy farming, you would have had lorries going up and down 24 hours a day. So you'd have it from midnight all the way through to 6 a.m. So you'd have.
I'm not really sure that this is the issue that we're arguing, is it? The proposal isn't currently for a dairy farm. The proposal is for a 15-unit industrial estate, which five of which could have HGV access. As far as we can tell from the plans, although James is saying otherwise, but I think we'd need concrete reassurances of this, the others could be converted. But I don't think the issue is about a dairy farm.
I'm very happy to give reassurance on the others. That's not a problem at all.
Stuart,
sorry,
hang on.
Sorry.
Stuart. Sorry, just waiting for your mic.
You won't let me unmute, Stuart.
Oh Lord, we're going to have to do it with mime.
Okay, I think I can respond to those main things, right? So I don't think anybody on Sunrise Hill cares for tractors going up and down. We all have kids that absolutely love tractors. We moved here because we love farming. When we see a combine out the window, when one goes down the road, it's the best thing that's happened that day. So it's not the size of the vehicle, it's the use that you're proposing. It just doesn't work for the levels of traffic and all of those things. And I totally agree with Kate that your highways data has been carefully managed. There's no way that what you're proposing will ever give a net reduction in use. And look at the size of your car park. How many parking spaces are in your car park?
There's 66 up there.
67 something?
66, yeah.
I mean, those people all have to come and go each day, right? I mean, whether it's a a dairy farm or lambing or whatever it is. We're not going to get that. And you know, these vehicles, they have different patterns of movement, don't they? Trucks, you know, Amazon deliveries, whatever. There's a very different thing to having a combine rumble up your road. So I think that goes back to Steve's point, is that we're not objecting to large traffic. We're objecting to the use of it. But the other thing I'd say, as a more global thing, I'm not here to represent the Sunrise people, but we have discussed this, and we're not against the proposals. We're against the access. I actually asked this question. I need them to represent themselves, but we actually would write in support of this application if the access was properly managed.
So does that include things like times of openings and that kind of thing? Is that the point you're making?
Yeah. We're not against them repurposing the farm site. They have made a few concessions, like the roller shutter doors genuinely is something that they wouldn't have done if we hadn't got involved, and we appreciate that. But the change to the access is the bare minimum they could have done, which potentially looks like it could get consent at planning, and that terrifies us. What they should really be doing is putting their money where their mouth is and doing what they're telling us they're doing, which is actually listening to the locals who are genuinely affected and putting the access in the best place, which is above to the north of the block of trees that Richard can see from his garden. If you look at one of the videos now, one of the people's faces, it's a view out the rear of one of our houses. And that block of trees right in the middle, that's where the road comes this side, significantly this side of those trees. I asked everybody who lives on Sunrise Hill, if the road was on the other side of those trees, would you write in support of this application? And everybody said yes.
Okay. We've got a couple last comments, and then I need to move the meeting back on. Jack and Ruth.
Hello.
Hello.
Hiya, yeah, Jack Hollywood. So I'm one of the Sunrise residents, and just building on Richard's point there, Stuart's point there, I can see the roof here, and talking about James's point of the footprint of the entry track is, I don't think it's really a viable point, because the point of an area of outstanding natural beauty is that you can't see anything that isn't outstanding and natural. And so if the road was longer and the footprint of the road was longer behind the trees, I feel that that would be a much more beneficial alternative for the area, because it's not then intruding in all of our views of the outstanding natural beauty. So if you can see my view.
Yeah, very exciting.
That's all I have, really.
And something we couldn't do in the school. So appreciate the live nature of our meeting. Would anyone like to make any final points before we move things back into the more formal?
Ruth, did you put your hand up?
No.
Okay.
Okay. I think.
Oh, hang on, Will's
Nick.
leaving us.
Oh, sorry. Where's he gone?
It's Nick.
Will? Oh, hang on. Will's waving. Huey's waving.
Oh Lord. Okay.
Can you hear me
Let's
now?
try and keep it short. Yeah. Thank you, Will.
I'd just like to quickly understand the next level of appeal. I'm with Alred here, which is just to get legal involvement here, because I think I think James can probably feel the level of sense the feeling in the village here, and I just think we probably, rather than individually getting legal advice, is just combine forces. So I'd just like to understand the next steps of appeal, and how we go about doing that, Andrew.
Okay. Who else wanted to just quickly say something?
Huey wanted to say something.
Yeah, well, at the meeting, was half an hour late. I closed down, and now I've got the email, so I'm totally uninformed. And the purpose of what I really want to find out was to see the plans of the track and the. Have you been shown those in the meeting?
Well, they were sent out beforehand, and they're on the West Berkshire Council site.
They weren't on the device I looked at.
I put in the appropriate passwords and things, and nothing came up. Yeah, I just got the outline of the whole place, but nothing where the track was or the.
The documents are definitely on the West Berkshire Council planning site.
And they're on our website as well.
And they're on our website apparently as well. So
just to add, if people have issues on the amount of additional traffic, I would say look at the proposal for the housing development in Compton, and that makes the additional traffic going to this development look like absolutely nothing because it's like tenfold. That's something which people in the village should be really aware of and complain about, because it's a real issue for the amount of traffic and lorries that are going to be coming through the village compared to a small development like this.
Yeah, so I think, was it just Nick wanted one last point and then we'll move on?
I just endorse Will and Harold's view. I think we haven't had a lot of time to think about this. We need to take some advice as to how we appeal properly against this proposed development. I said before, and I'm not going to reiterate beyond this point, that I don't see the logic of it. I don't see the need for it. I don't think it takes into account anything other than Dyson's own desires and purposes. And I see no recognition being taken of the local residents in East Ilsley.
Okay.
I'd be totally against it.
Okay, thank you, Nick. Yeah, so we'll start to stand the meeting back up, in which case it's just down really for the councillors to just discuss the next bits, and then we might have some final comments, but we have rather run that on a little bit. Just to give some sort of context to generally how this does work for those who aren't sure, having done this for quite a long time, generally the influence the parish council has on planning decisions locally seems to have largely been absolutely minimal. The actual key decision makers are West Berkshire Council. So while I'm not saying it doesn't have any impact, you know, it's really, really important people understand where comments really need to go and where action, because, you know, you can write to the parish council, you're blue in the face, but ultimately we aren't the people making the final decision. The final decision is being made by West Berkshire Council, and we've tended to find that they haven't necessarily taken that much notice of whatever we tend to say, because they are always looking in theory at the macro view of not only the local area, but actually the wider West Berkshire area in terms of strategic goals and things like that. So do please bear that in mind, that this is not a decision that if we say yay or nay to it, automatically it will happen or won't happen. That just isn't the case. But hopefully everyone feels happy that we've let everybody have their say, and we've answered as many questions as we could given the issues and problems we have. And I do recognise, I think, the challenge that we've had with things like the signs, but you know, ultimately that again comes back to West Berkshire Council rather than either Dyson or the parish council. So and no one obviously could have predicted the fact that the COVID issue would have meant that planning officers didn't go out and post orange signs up. But it really, I take your point, it absolutely doesn't help in terms of transparency and ensuring people get heard. So I'm going to now stand the meeting back up so it's formally minuted, and we will go to item 5, which is to actually...
Sorry, Caroline just raised her hand. Could she speak?
Sorry. Yes, go on, Caroline, just quickly.
Thank you very much. Probably most of you know me. I'm the district councillor for this area. So just to let you know what happens with the planning situation, either the planning application can be decided at the desk of the planning officers in the district council, or it can be called into something called Western Area Planning Committee. So there are 9 cross-party members of that committee, including myself. So I, as the ward councillor, can call it in, and then it would have to be discussed by that committee. So you're allowed to lobby members of that committee, but we're not allowed to make any commitment either way until the night of the meeting, and we have to look at all the evidence. So the evidence would come from the applicant, the agent, the supporters, the opponents, the parish council, and so on. And all of those people get the opportunity to be heard at the meeting. During COVID, that's in writing rather than in person. So just to reassure you, there should not be a situation where a decision is just made. I think with the strength of feeling and with the support of the parish council, I would call this in and actually have it discussed at a meeting so that all interested parties can get an opportunity to have their say. So just so you understand how the West Berkshire process works. But I, as a member of that committee, I'm not allowed to express an opinion one way or the other. Everyone can talk to me. I can answer questions, but I can't express an opinion. I have to make a decision on the night of the meeting. But we can take it to that meeting if you so wish.
Thanks, Caroline. That's really, really helpful information. I hope everybody's sort of understood that. So, because we've spent a reasonable amount of time on that already. So, if we're back at item 5 officially, aren't we, Fen?
Yeah.
So over to the councillors in terms of opinions, questions, thoughts on what we've heard, the application. Anyone got any thoughts?
Hey, I'll go first, actually. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
So my overarching view is I'm in two heads on. I obviously live next door to Nick on Broad Street, sick to death of all the traffic coming past. I've been here since 2014. The traffic has increased, but we are at the forefront of that traffic. You can't get round it. So if I had my way, and Harold is opposite me, I would close off the one-way system and I'd have the traffic going past the pub. We're going to get a shed loads more traffic coming down the line from Compton. A lot of houses have been built, potentially a new school. So there's a lot going on there that we as a village collectively need to be pushing on when that comes down the line. But with my parish council hat on, concern be back to James as well is I want to act on what they want.
Sorry, Brendan, you're breaking up a little bit.
Lockdown. The second thing I'd want lockdown. Can you hear me?
We can now.
We can now.
For me are 2 points. Can you hear me now? So one of the major points is the hours of opening. Hours of opening, crucially important. 6.5 days a week is too much, arguably. And otherwise, the buildings that have got the businesses that are going to be actually up at sunrise. Traffic is important. Route to a view, that beautiful view there in the middle camera. You know, I'm living with the traffic. Nick's living with the traffic. Harold's living with the traffic. It's on our doorstep. There's nothing we can do. So I'm looking at it with my parish council hat on to say, what businesses are going to be going up there? I don't like the idea of HGV, and I want to lock down the value of the number of hours these buildings are open for. So if someone came to me and said they can open after 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, then that changes the landscape greatly. A bit like Dice, a bit like Maxted's call centre. It's that wider conversation. Being 6.5 days open, I don't want cars coming past at the weekend. I want to be chilling out. But the fact of the matter is I can't do that because the traffic is busy as it is. So if we can lock down when the offices are open and decide what's going to be in those offices. So if you got rid of the plan of having no HGB and a piano teacher wants to run their business from up there, it's a beautiful setting. Why not? But it's a wider context for me. And my view on this planning is about looking at it for the greater good of the village, while also looking at it from a personal perspective. I'm sick of death of the traffic. I'm absolutely sick to death of it as a resident. But I'm also thinking, from a business perspective, what impact could that have for the village if the right businesses were put up there, allowed to operate in a restricted number of hours?
Thanks, Brendan.
So that's me.
Anybody else?
No, I just think that they have to review, maybe, like everyone says, to put the road behind the trees and then that would be, nobody would see anything then. And the hours of work, because I live on Abingdon Road and it's horrendous. So yeah, there were just the two options that I would put forward.
Yeah, I think. Sorry. Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, no, I'm with Tracy on that. I think that would be a great idea because, we don't want the residents up there to have that view because, when they moved in, the view is beautiful, but so to have it hidden would be great. And I think that would be a much better option. But I also think, like I said before, from a traffic perspective, if people have an issue, the building in Compton for the housing is going to be way worse than anything that's happening up at Sunrise. Way worse.
Okay.
The only thing you can say about that, though, Steve, is that you've got the Compton traffic and this on top of it, so it's even going to be even worser of the English. So anything that kept the traffic down, especially in peak traffic. So I mean, if it went 9 till 5, we've got a lot of traffic coming from Compton anyway. So if it was staggered a little bit later, that would actually make it better than at peak traffic.
Okay.
If you get what I mean.
Yeah, and I think I tend to agree with everybody. Both myself and Steve have got traffic coming within 10 inches of our front door, which is probably closer than anybody in the meeting.
We do. We're on the
no, I think we're closer, Trace, because you've got parked cars. We haven't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
They're literally 10 inches.
Exactly.
So traffic, believe me, every single piece of traffic going through the village is going past my house and occasionally hitting it. It is a key consideration, but equally, so the other key considerations we've got to think about are what's going to be happening in 20 years' time, where we are with this COVID nightmare, the nonsense and the damage it's done to the local economy, the national economy. We don't know where it's going to be. So things that potentially might benefit it should be a balancing factor as well. Vehicles within 10 years will all be electric, so that will help. Who knows? Maybe we'll get to hoverboards. But I think the really key things for me were the opening hours, certainly, and clearly the road. So I think those seem to be the really key things because, whether or not it ever would go back to any other use, but the milk lorries that used to hammer through here at 3 a.m. Weren't desperately great either, and they weren't cute and combine harvesty either. So that we always have to be mindful of what we are and aren't voting for, or what we are and aren't keen on, and ending up potentially with something worse. But I'm hoping that James has got a view that I don't think is unreasonable, largely speaking. I think most of the points that have been made seem very, very reasonable. And if we move on to 5A, the modifications that were presented with this based on the original application, I'd have to say, having dealt with previous folks putting planning applications into various things like Penn Meadow, or the initial Maxted call centre idea for a 24/7, 365-day call centre in the middle of the village, to start with, that wasn't desperately helpful in terms of what people would or wouldn't do. So, I think the beeswax folk have done a pretty good job of listening. That doesn't mean they've completely listened, but I'm hoping they might go away from tonight and get a feel of both some practical steps. And generally speaking, you'd have to say, with a meeting relatively short-term advertised, there is a serious degree of unhappiness with what's currently being sort of put towards. So while some of the mitigation, I think, certainly has improved the whole thing, I think, who knows, with some other mitigation, you might find the general shift of the meeting might move into something more positive. Does anybody else want to discuss any of the other mitigations and changes from the original document, or shall we move on?
Right.
No, I think we have covered pretty much everything on here. And I think on 5B, I think we've covered off all of the points that were raised in the various emails that were sent in and questioned. I can't think of any points. Fen, I don't know if you're aware of anything that we haven't really covered off. I think we've done them all.
It's mainly roads, isn't it? Roads and traffic.
Roads,
and
opening
viewing.
hours.
And opening hours. Yeah.
Yeah, and traffic estimations, things like that.
Yeah.
And hopefully the people who weren't as cited on some of the documents, as I said, the link's been put in the chat session that you can go and actually look at this at a later date. But Caroline's explanation of where this now goes, regardless of what we say or do, is absolutely the key thing that people have got to focus on. And hopefully, again, out of the meeting, discussing things with James, because I'm absolutely sure they'd be absolutely happy to continue the conversation to see whether or not this can be put into some sort of workable fashion. Is everyone able to see the comments? If you click on the comments button, they'll pop up at the side of the video. So I think we will move to 5C, which is completing the parish observation sheet for the planning application. I have no idea how we're going to do this virtually, but this is effectively the document that says we either have no opinion. Yeah, I can't quite see that. No opinion, support it, or object, I think.
So it is, the box we've got here is a tick box saying no objections. And then we've got a tick box saying support, or a tick box saying object, and then reasons.
Okay. Would anyone of the councillors like to offer a proposal as to what they think we should do?
On the current state of play, and following on from my original questions, I as a parish councillor, I have to object to the current application in its current state, as on the basis of the type of use and locking that down, and also locking down the opening hours. Until that's nailed, I can't support it.
Anybody else?
Yeah, I support the application as I did in the first instance. I think that Beeswax Dyson have, shown good willing to change things. I think the big issue is the road and the access. And I think if we can come to an agreement from that, and work with the residents up on Sunrise to get a good track. I think we can have something there. I think we're coming into a worse recession in the last 300 years, and to stop something which is going to create jobs and revenue for the country, we shouldn't say no, to be fair.
Tracy?
Yeah, I've got no objection so long as the road gets looked at again and the opening times can be a little bit more, would be better rather than 9 o'clock at night.
Okay.
But are these objections then? But if they change, I know I shouldn't be jumping in here, but it sounds like there's no objections if things change. But they're not changing.
Hang on a minute, Richard. I'm afraid we have to go through the legal process, or none of this counts, and we can potentially pick this up under item 8. I think my view on this is, I was, and again, the world has massively changed since last August, September, whenever it was we last considered this, in terms of how essential additional business, additional work, builders being used, etc., etc. We're in an utterly different place. So that has to be a major consideration. But equally, I tend to lean slightly more with that in mind in terms of what Brendan's talking about. And I think our only course of action with explanation is to actually formally object on the basis that the opening hours, the access road, and what I'm hoping is that if we go back and can get those amended, I think I'd be supporting it. But I think because oddly enough, we almost had less objections with the road going through the houses, as I remember rightly on that score. It was more that either the whole development or nothing. And we've seen some improvements, but I don't think we've seen enough that are going to make this work for enough of the people in the village. Because what we can't do is just stand still. We cannot ignore the biggest recession in 300 years. And while some of the people who may be objecting might be in the position that it's not something that will concern them or what have you, one of the roles of what we're doing is to try and think about where's the village going to be in 10, 20 years. And is this likely to be more positive or less positive? And, you know, one of the positive things I do take out of a lot of the work that Beeswax has done, and it cannot be underestimated, is the positive stuffs in terms of some of the planting of the water-friendly plants that are helping with the flooding, some of the repairs of the gates and fences. So while there may be issues in terms of some activity, a very large proportion of it has been very, very positive. So it just sort of strikes me that there must be some middle ground here that will keep more rather than less people, if not happy, but content that they've been listened to and the village has been listened to in the best interest of the village, given the fact that if it was turned back into an agricultural place, which, and again, the only thing I would say is that anytime anybody buys anything where there is a brownfield site or something like that, you can never ever go, nothing will ever be done with it. You know, that is just not the case. And that's unrealistic to use that as well, it wasn't there, 2 years ago. 1966, there wasn't an A34 with the kind of traffic going through. And if you happen to be living on Stanmore Road, you were in for a bit of a surprise when they bent the A34 into the village because of the Queen's Gallops. You come over the hill at Didcot, it bends into the village. So the folks who were living in Stanmore Road, I'm sure pretty much didn't really want that. So we have all these balancing factors, but I think what I'm minded to do is that we put an objection on this with the reasons that we've talked about, Fence. So the road, the opening hours, the guarantees on usage, and perhaps I almost wonder whether with even the roller shutter businesses, can we limit the size of vehicles that would be delivering to it? Because I'm not a logistics expert, so I don't, there is a big difference between a 6-axle HGV and a 3-axle mid-range van, whatever, and they are different. So these are the sort of objections that I think, and I have to say I've changed my mind a bit. And it's partly because there just seems to be a strength of feeling coming from different parts of the village that wasn't here before. But I equally do say we have to be mindful of the damage the economy has sustained. I don't think people have realised what it is yet. We haven't even been in this 6-8 weeks. And when we get to the end of furloughing and Lord knows what else, and working in health as I do, we are a long, long way off normal. And frankly, normal doesn't look like it's coming back at any time soon. No possible concrete evidence vaccines are going to be available or working. or will work long term. So I hate to be the angel of doom on all this, but you know, we do equally have to look at how we move forward positively. So I am going to propose we object, given those reasons. Could I have a show of hands? Or Steve, because we can't see you, you might have to say yay or nay.
Object.
Steve, are you objecting or not?
No,
Yeah, it's entirely. I'm not trying to pressurize you in any way, shape, or form.
I'm for the development. To be fair.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine because I think you know, effectively we're saying it's 3-1 object.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I'm only objecting on the grounds that were mentioned. I think had we had a proposal that answered some of those, I think I'd be supporting it.
Well, no, I mean, and I'm sticking with it because, you know, I had no issue with it last time, and I think they've actually put forward different ideas and proposals. Yeah, it's not not everyone is going to agree to it. So I'm not going to, you know, backtrack on my my original decision, and especially seeing as, you know, we're coming into this massive recession. You know, I think any development is a great thing. So yeah, I'm sticking with my original decision.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I mean, again, I just want to reiterate, I'm only changing my mind because I think if we'd have had these points answered, I think I'd be supporting it. So this is not I've utterly changed my mind. I think it's a terrible idea. I don't, but I think we need to get these points answered, and some of the points made by various residents, I think, do this. And equally, we have to bear in mind, in, as I said, 10 years' time, every vehicle will be electric, and who knows what else will be happening. So, Fen.
So I minuted that Tracy had no objection, but obviously the road, the view, and the opening times was an issue.
Well, I think the problem is,
it's like
you can't have no objection.
Yeah.
You either do or you don't, because the problem is, if you support it with those objections, the parish council element is sort of passed through and it moves on.
So are you
to its next
abstaining,
stage.
or are you objecting now?
Well, I want I mean, full, like Steve, really. I want the development to go through, but I want the changes made from the movement of the road to change that, and the opening hours. So,
and I think the other key thing here is for Caroline to call this into the Western area planning. I think you probably need us to say we're objecting. I don't know if that's right. Could you just unmute Caroline and ask her?
You don't necessarily. I can call it in either way. I've called things in before just by a particular individual not being happy about something. It's up to the chair of the committee ultimately. So the stronger the case I make, the more likely he is to accept it as a call in.
And I think also the other thing this actually gives James is the ability to come back and talk to everybody, both in Sunrise Hill and elsewhere, because this is going to be one of these things whether from their decision they think they either can or can't change things, where they feel you'll get more support or not. And if not, as with lots of things like the Maxted development that went through, we had 72 written objections and West Berkshire Council still put it through. So, you know, I don't want to get beyond in terms of what people feeling this is the end of things, or even realistically it doesn't make a huge amount of difference. I think you'll find what really matters is what goes into West Berkshire Council and what Western area planning. And equally, you know, James may want to come back and say, look, we will have another look at this and come back with another proposal. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to talk for him, and equally I'm mindful of the time that we've been cracking on an hour and a half. So we've got that written down, what we're doing, Fen, and I presume, can I sign that and scan it and get it back to you? Or?
Doesn't need a signature, it's just the date of the meeting and our observation, so I'll do it tomorrow.
Fabulous. Oh, the power.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, the power. Right, so we've done it. So item 6, and So item 6 is to agree on which company will receive the contract to update our website. What are our proposals, Fen?
Oh, well, this is really quick. It'll take 2 minutes.
Okay,
So
fine.
at the last virtual meeting, we decided we'd go with Hugo Fox because they were £300, £400 to migrate. We went back to TEEC in Newbury, who are offering the 10 email addresses.
Yes.
He wanted 2,000 nearly for our migration. He's now agreed to do it for £400. So it's just to check, are you all happy to go with him?
I am.
And he'll do the migration. So we'll get
no
free
problem.
emails. We're not going to increase our Google spend. And £10
And he's
a
in
month
Newbury.
support. And he's in Newbury.
And he's in Newbury, and we know where he is.
Yeah.
Marvellous. So
Yeah.
that's that done.
Is everybody happy with that? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you. He will have that ready for us by the regulations of the 23rd of September.
Fantastic. Item 7, to agree on which company will complete the necessary repair work on the existing playground. So this basically is so that we comply with health and safety, because we have to get an annual report, and obviously with the playground being in the state it's in, it leaves us with some problems that we have to make sure even in current conditions get dealt with. So what are our options, Fen?
So we've had 2 quotes, one from PlaySource that are based in Milton Keynes, and one from CJM Services in Newbury. Jerry Clark from AD Clark are also quoting, but they are stuck with getting pricing from suppliers. So I haven't had that one in yet. But basically, I sent them our report, annual report, and to get the playground up to a safe standard when we can reopen it, they're pretty similar on prices. PlaySource 2458 ex VAT and CJM Services 2578. They don't charge VAT. VAT
Do we
from
get the VAT
PlaySource.
back?
We will get the VAT back next year, but
So the first one is cheaper.
yes,
in realistic terms.
Yeah, it's just shy of £100. Yeah.
Oh right, okay.
But the other one, if it's in Newbury though,
yeah,
and we need somebody out that can go in.
Yeah, I think again, having had all the problems we've had with the previous playground, I'm mindful not to just look entirely at cost as the only deciding factor. And equally, if they did something and we weren't happy with it, maybe we could get them back in a lot easier than someone who's in Milton Keynes.
Yeah. So he's good to go as soon as we give him the nod. They're cleared to travel, and the fact that the playground's still closed means that they won't be near anybody.
Can I have a proposal for accepting CJM?
Yeah.
Tracy?
Yeah.
All in agreement?
Yeah, definitely.
Fabulous, thank you. And the last item, any questions or comments from members of the public or James, just for the last 10 minutes?
One from Caroline. Can I just read that one out?
Of course.
It is there an update on the pond clearance quotes? I have an answer for you for that one.
Fabulous.
West Berkshire Council have given us 3 contractors that are approved by them to do the clearance. I have phoned and emailed all 3 of them, and they've all come back to say nothing's happening at the moment. We're not coming out. We're not working with haulage companies or hire plant people, so we can't give you any pricing until things get back to normal. But
So in the meantime, can you, if we actually get quotes off them, circulate the details of the quotes, or have we not got that far?
They won't even provide me with those
Come and
yet.
look.
But
Fair enough.
But I haven't tried since Wednesday's restrictions, so I will try
so it
again
might have
this
changed.
week. Yeah.
Yeah, because we absolutely, what's left of the summer, and if we're allowed, we need to get the pond cleared, the reeds dealt with, because we got very, very close to some very serious flooding in the village, and I'm still not convinced that the pond was draining as fast as it should have done, because if the pond backs up, then houses around the square get flooded.
Yeah. Can we just reiterate, just for the audience, that unfortunately it's kind of gone beyond grass cutting and reed maintenance. It's actual sort of silt build-up that has shallowed the pond, and so these sort of heavy contractors would come in and literally excavate out the pond and make it
And
deeper.
we've also got a problem of contamination as well, potentially. It's not necessarily contaminated, but the samples might need to be tested. So it sort of happens every 10 years that this kind of tends to go wrong. And one of the things I think we'd have to follow this up with Thames Water and hopefully getting a flood warden for the village is we see if there's a more permanent solution, because what is really annoying is this is not the village's fault. A lot of this silt is coming off fields, a lot of stuff is coming off the A34. Silt traps aren't getting emptied by West Berkshire Council, and the minute any part of the system stops working, the pond starts filling up. You lose the capacity for it to drain groundwater away, and we did have exceptionally high groundwater, as I'm sure some of you have seen the 24/7 tankering from Thames Water. I don't know if anyone else has noticed it. It goes past my door 24/7 and has done every day for the last 5 weeks.
1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning.
Which, considering we're trying to get diesels off the road, doesn't seem ideal to me. And 20 years they've known about this, and they are not offering a long-term solution. So I think things like the pond have to be looked at absolutely in the round. Right. Any other correspondence or anything we need to deal with, or we can go back to question 8 and wrap things up?
Brendan, do you want to say something? Can't
He's
hear
on
you.
mute.
Oh, can you hear me? So
Yeah.
I'm waiting for James to have the opportunity to start answering and start giving us more clarity.
Okay.
When we get there.
Okay, so Stuart had a quick point. Stuart?
Yes, just unmuting. Yeah, I noticed quick. Yes, okay, I'll do my best. Is it possible for the parish council, or is it worth the parish council making a site visit, or do you know how you want to act on this already?
Well, we've made our decision effectively, so now it's sort of off into West Berkshire planning land. I think what's really key from this point is what James has got to say in terms of what he's heard and what's been done. So, because if we are in a situation where mitigations might be able to change people's minds, then that's probably the next thing. I can see Giles has got his hand up.
Hi, thanks. I just wanted to sort of make a point, or that we as a community have voted for a green local council. That is a strong part of who we are, and a lot of people talked about the countryside here. We've talked a lot about economics and trying to build our way out of this, and we don't know, it's an unsure future. But I mean, if there are unused industrial units in the local area, I don't see how it serves us to build more industrial units that could then be unused in an environment of natural beauty. So I think the economy is absolutely part of this conversation, but we are clearly engaged, and we clearly have a responsibility to represent East Ilsley and protect it to be what we want it to be. I appreciate things are going in Compton, and we can oppose them, talk to those as much as possible, but it doesn't have to be our identity. I think we as a village, if we want to be stronger and we want to be, object to these things, and that is our duty, and maybe we need to have a louder voice to do that. But I hear the things about the economy. I don't necessarily agree that we're going to build our way out of it, and building our way out of it is the solution. I think we can also stand on, we live in a beautiful area, and that's what we want East Ilsley to represent and be, and how we can maintain that way. So that's what I just wanted to say on that one.
Anyone else got any points they want to make before we bring James back in? James, do you want to come back with any
thanks for all the comments. So we've obviously heard them all. And in terms of hours of operation, really happy to review that and put another proposal forward. That's not a problem at all. That's really easily done and something we're very happy to do. In terms of conditions on use, yeah, we've already sort of made that offer in the planning application in terms of the use class and the relative doors, and very happy, you know, with our contracts to make sure there's appropriate use class up there, and very happy to look at that, and if we can make more suggestions on that, very happy to do that as well. In terms of the access, I mean, just looking at the plans while we've been talking, really happy to sort of look at it. I mean, we've been looking at it for a long time now, and we think the proposed route offers the less ecological impact in the AOMB. The other routes on the side of the skyline would offer a lot more sort of metal track into an AOMB, and it's obviously the landscape visual impact assessment we submitted as well has now looked at all areas from the Ridgeway right through to the village, from the A34 and Dennisford Road. So it's taking that holistic view a whole lot, and the ecological impact as well. Obviously the proposals include planting on either side of the drive for some screening. I'm very happy to look at options to improve that screening if that would be beneficial, and very happy to look at what else we can do by all means.
Thank you, James. Stuart, do you want to just come in one last time?
Yeah, please. The Sunrise folk have given, I think, a very clear indication of how Dyson can get a successful, an application here that the community much more broadly support, and it's to just spend a bit more money on that road. You're cutting it too short. If you made it twice as long as you've made it, you can have it behind the trees, you can do whatever you want, and it doesn't have to go along the route that I sent you a picture of. It just needs to be a bit longer to make sure that it avoids the community. And the numbers are really critical here, because your highways report says 24 existing vehicle movements versus 188 proposed. I totally dispute the 24 figure, but even if you don't, that's not a 5% increase. That's on Cow Lane, right? This is a 783% increase. And this is a massive change in the way this site is being used. Massive change.
Okay. Kate, you were going to make a quick point for us. Kate?
You're on mute, Kate.
I muted her.
Right. I was actually going to make exactly the same point that Stuart's made about the 783% increase.
Fabulous. Does anybody have any final points they'd like to raise before we close the meeting?
Yes, Stephen here. Just one thing. From the parish members who are on today, can you all let me know who has actually kind of complained about the development in Compton, and who attended the meetings over there with regard to the housing development? Because the traffic that's going to come from that development is going to be enormous. So I just want to kind of get the idea of who's actually mentioned something, who has complained to the council about the development.
Anyone want to go forward of that,
Yeah,
Tracy?
it's Harold, sorry. Steve Meadows keeps making this point about Compton. Can I understand that the Compton development is going to affect the traffic here from Dyson? I'm not sure I understand.
No, it's
exactly. There's no connection. So he's mentioned it 3 times, so I'm a bit confused. But anyway, it seems quite clear that there's a mismatch between the voice of opinions and feeling that I hear and how the parish council are reflecting that, which seems much more modest and moderate. And I think I'll defer to conversations with Will Turner and my neighbour Nick to see how we might take it outside this forum with a bit of legal advice, etc., because it is outrageous. And James and his namesake, Sir James, are doing this purely for gratuitous commercial, not gratuitous, but targeted commercial finessing of what is a land bank that is going to stay in the Dyson estate for decades. And whether you have a shed here or there refurbished or not is totally irrelevant to the total picture. But he has the management team that are charged with optimizing every opportunity.
Okay, thank you for that.
Let me just add to that. So, from the development that Dyson are proposing for here, that's one thing. And so my question was, who else who's on this call has complained about the development in Compton? Because the development in Compton will affect traffic in this village 10 times more than the development here for the barns. So that's the question I'm asking. So, Errol, Will.
Okay, so the answer is yes, everyone has complained, and it's a total red herring in the context of today's discussion.
Of course we've complained, but that's not what we're discussing tonight. It's completely
Exactly.
a separate point.
Right, the meeting tonight is a parish council meeting for lots of different things. It's not just about the development of the barns. So
it is. That's correct. But it certainly isn't about the development in Compton. I don't think that was on the agenda.
No, but there are questions and comments allowed. So every opinion is valid. So it should be treated, accordingly.
Yeah, but when it's repeated 5 times, I think it's probably enough, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I think okay, but I think we've heard lots of similar opinions as well. So I think again, I'll revert back to the validity of opinions. Has anybody got any final comments? Caroline, you sort of put your hand up, but
yeah, just one sort of factual thing to say about the Compton development. As you'll probably know, they did a public consultation exercise, what seems like years ago now. They were going to put in an application in January, February time, and they didn't. And I contacted Simon Till, the planning officer at West Berkshire, a couple of days ago to ask him if there's any update. And as yet, no application has been put in for that area. So that's not to say that it won't be, but just so you know the latest position, nothing has gone in yet.
Okay. Thank you for that. If there are no further comments or questions, I'm going to call the meeting to a close. Can I
ask one tiny thing? Sorry. Can I just check with the playground stuff? Are you happy that the cost of this repair comes out of our earmark reserve for playground?
Yes.
Thank
you. Yeah. So I also just wanted to say thank you to absolutely everybody for turning up. I think the meeting ran better than we probably hoped for, because it's really difficult to run meetings with so many people, and hopefully everyone felt they were listened to and heard, if not necessarily agreed with. But thank you, and I think again, as part of the new normal, if we can get attendances like this at parish council meetings virtually, I'm not sure why we would want to go and sit in a school hall on our own. So perhaps we need to take that back to West Berkshire Council to see whether the new normal might include virtual meetings as well, because it's often far easier for people to do this sort of thing. And it is absolutely brilliant to get more people here listening, trying to understand what we're all up to and what needs doing in just something as simple as running a tiny parish council. So thank you all very much. Have a good evening. Stay very safe. And we will hopefully see you under easier times. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.